Hi, Chris.
Hey, Philippe, how you doing?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Great. Thanks for taking the time with me today to discuss the VoIP system deployment and networking requirement, the basic things. Um, we will have a short discussion about this topic and to have your 2 cents and knowledge to our audience to know how to get started with this particular topic. But first, because I have you and would like to start this with a little crosstalk and Chris Sherwood interview. Um,
Sure.
I would like to, for our audience, you know you well, but for the people at VoIP.ms, maybe they would like to know more about you. I would like to you that you tell me a little bit about your background and how first you came into the IT career, where it come from.
Sure. Yeah. So, man, going back a long, long ways, late 90s, right? So this is I was just like anyone, 19, 20 years old, looking for work, and um, I had already had an interest in computers. I was already on BBS systems back then, dialing in with modems and communicating with people and all that sort of stuff. 2400 baud, if that means anything to anyone listening, right? But yeah, no. So I had a strong interest in computers, and I got a job at a collection agency of all places. People that call up debtors and say, hey, you need to pay this money. And originally I was just in that call center, calling people up and reading the script and that sort of stuff. And their IT team was very, very busy all the time. So it ended up getting to a point where if something broke in that call center, they would come to me because they knew that I knew how to kind of fix computers. And then I'd go over and I'd fix computers and or fix their computer and then go back, put the headset back on and back to work. And then, of course, after a while, their IT team was like, "This guy kind of knows what he's doing. Let's hire him." Right. So I got hired into their IT team, as I started learning the ropes, installing Windows and virus scanners and that sort of stuff, fixing printers. The sort of lowest tier of IT administration, um, and then the company went through a bit of a kind of a dire straits where they were losing money. They had to make a bunch of layoffs, and a whole bunch of my team got laid off. But I didn't, since I was probably like the lowest paid guy at the time. And they came to me after the layoffs and they brought me into the office and they said, listen, as you know, so and so and so and so are gone now and da da da. And like, okay, so you're in charge of the phone system now. And I was like, all right. It was an old NEC 2400 phone system. And so basically, I called in the people that were our third party, contractors for that phone system. I brought them in and they basically trained me on the spot on how to use it and how to do stuff. And just over time, you just start learning and learning. And yeah, that turned into an IT career up to the point where I was working for a company called Finality, which is a voice over IP company. They don't exist anymore. They were bought out at some point. But from my time in Finality, they kind of had the same thing. They sort of like started running in the red. They really never turned a profit like the entire time that I worked there. And I was a remote worker. I was living out on the Oregon coast, working remotely, and they did the same thing. They did a round of layoffs, and I got laid off. So I was in a director level IT position at this company, working remote from the Oregon coast, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, now what do I do? I just got laid off, and I got laid off, and then the next day we found out my wife was pregnant with our second kid. So it was not, it was as you can imagine, it was a very stressful time in our lives. But it made it through, and just basically from lack of options, I started Crosstalk Solutions as a YouTube channel because I had an abundance of time. And I just started making videos on free PBX and computer networking, and that just grew and grew to the point where, again, people are like, "Hey, this guy kind of seems like he knows what he's talking about. Let's hire him to work on this." And it's now grown into what we have today, which is, we still do a lot of YouTube, but the bulk of our revenue comes from phone system sales and network and voice over IP consulting. right? So we have a number of people that work for us, and if you need help with your network, if you need help with a phone system, that's what we are here for, to help our customers sort through those IT issues.
So your business, your IT business, uh, came after the YouTube channel, and not you did not start your your YouTube channel because of the IT business. Usually, the logical timeline would be that you are already in IT, or you were actually, but that was your main activity job, and after because you wanted to um, share your knowledge, you open a YouTube channel. But it's all in your case, it's a little bit all mixed up, and you started your YouTube channel, and that brought your business to life. That's what I understand.
Yeah, it kind of happened. When you are out of work and desperate for, feeding your family and making an income, you kind of cast a really wide net, right? So, well, I had started the YouTube channel, but I was also out there in the local community, visiting businesses door to door, just walking in and saying, hey, do you need any help with your networks or Wi-Fi or phone systems? I was putting ads in the newspaper for IT work, so I was trying everything. And the only thing that really stuck was YouTube, where people started contacting me from all over the country, and hey, we need help with this, we need help with that. I saw your video, and can you help out with our system? And yeah, it just grew from there. So as far as my advice for people that are kind of in the same boat, or looking to start in the type of business that I do, is basically is just cast a wide net. Do absolutely everything. I mean, I was building websites for people. I'm not a website developer. I know my way around WordPress. So I was able to kind of do as much of that IT work as possible for people in the local community until the Crosstalk Solutions YouTube channel sort of caught on more. And then I could narrow my focus down to basically just computer networking and voice over IP, which of course, computer networking is the foundation of voice over IP, right?
Yeah.
A good voice over IP experience relies on a solid foundation in the computer network. So it all sort of ties together.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Honestly, I saw this week because it's your 7 year anniversary of your YouTube channel, and I was
Yep.
looking at the thread under it, and one thing that catch my attention was one particular. I think it's with a lady, but I'm not exactly sure with a Twitter handle. You never know, but was talking about the ubiquity equipment that she was so scared she wouldn't touch about it. She wouldn't came near of it at all, but she started listening at your video, and now she's making a living out of it, or and she can't work without it anymore. So I was really amazed by the fact that it's not only an IT or VoIP channel or YouTube channel. It's also inspiring people to build up on their own, and motivate them to take their, because it was basically for her, or for this person, it was a fear basically. And she was like, okay, yeah, if this guy explained it that easily to me, maybe I could give it a chance. And she made it. And there was multiple example of this under that Twitter thread. And I was really like amazed by the fact that you kind of grounding and gathering all these people around that topic for a reason that I cannot explain it. Probably you cannot neither. But people trust your judgment, your skills, and it's kind of beautiful to see
Yeah.
where where it went. And from my point of view, it's also really inspiring. So, thumbs up and happy anniversary. I hope
No,
you
thank you.
will make it to multi-million subscriber channels.
Oh, I hope so
Uh,
too.
yeah, even if you said that it's not um, your main focus, your main uh, money, uh, like where you earn the most. However, I think it's a really good channel to show the world that what you can do, and it's also a really good place to just uh, share your knowledge, inspire people. So yeah, for a long-term viewer from your channel and YouTube in general, it for me this is the spirit. So
Yeah, no, I love hearing stories like that, and I'm glad if I can help anyone because it sounds really cliche, but if I can do it, anyone can do it. So I hope that comes across as part of the channel. But actually, the funny thing is I hear stories like that, which I love. I also hear stories where people say, my wife hates you because
because you're
because
making buy stuff.
people binge watch the videos. They makes them spend a lot of money on Ubiquity equipment or other equipment that they don't need. And yeah, so I get that a lot too, which is sort of the other side of that coin.
You can make everybody happy.
That's right. Yeah. And then my kids, of course, they see, I've got my 100,000 subscriber YouTube plaque. And they say, well, when are you getting to 1 million, Dad? So they watch all these people playing video games on YouTube that have 4 or 5 million subscribers. They say, well, how come you can't do that, Dad?
you know,
So,
you can explain them what's a niche market.
right. Yes.
And
Exactly. My certainly not as popular as playing Roblox or Minecraft.
or Minecraft, unfortunately not. Yeah,
Right.
YouTube is getting more popular than ever, but I think you will agree that you are in the niche market. If in your
Definitely.
market, I can count on my end like the most successful YouTuber with more than 100,000 subscriber. I can count them on my hand. There's only a few of them that made it through it because
Sure.
it's so technical. You have to. It's so easy to say something that it's not accurate, and people just ram you, and you just lose credibility just because you say one thing that is not accurate, and they lose trust from you. They just oh no, okay, this guy just pull out crap. So I
Oh,
know
and
this.
you'll hear about it too. Believe
Yeah,
me, people are
well,
not shy about telling you when you said something incorrectly.
yeah, probably. I couldn't imagine. So yeah, it's a good story. Honestly, I did not know this about you, so it's very surprising. I thought that you start your business first and your YouTube channel, like typical uh, timeline, but no, it's not exactly this. So I'm
Yeah,
very
well, and this is kind of what I tell people is I had so when I was laid off, I already had a number of customers, 3 or 4 customers in my local area that I was already helping on the side with computer networking, with their phone systems, that sort of stuff.
but
Just
it was not work.
local businesses that I liked and had approached over the years and said, hey, if you ever need help with this or that, let me know. And they took me up on that offer. So I did have a small set of customers on the side already, when I was laid off. So I would recommend to people if they are looking to switch to more of an independent consulting capacity, or start their own business, don't wait until you are out of work to do that. You can start, by posting ads on Craigslist, and saying, hey, does anyone need help with this or that? There's a number of ways that you can start even before you've actually made the jump. And it's nice to have a little bit of a head start on that stuff. Makes the transition easier.
Yeah, yeah, but it's also not everybody that want to become famous. So at the same time, YouTube career versus IT MSP career, I think
Yeah.
it's two different things. It's really amazing that you made the make those two path cross between them. But yeah, so yeah, thanks for that little story.
Sure.
It's very nice to know more about you after a year and so talking to you. It's
Oh yeah. Well, we've
something.
been working together for a while now, right? I mean, we've been reselling VoIP.ms trunks to our customers for at least 3 or 4 years. The thing that I try to get across to not only my YouTube audience, but more importantly, my actual customers, is the importance of a strong, reliable SIP trunking provider. Because like there's nothing more frustrating than when your phones are down and customers are trying to call you and they're getting a busy signal or something like that. And yeah, it's lost business, it's lost revenue. So people that just try to contact me and they say, oh, well, hey, can we just set up free Google Voice lines or something for the business? I'm like, and let's not even go there
For the home
because
maybe, but for a
you
business,
get what you pay for.
yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Exactly. It's I always say that about the cell phones industry. A lot of people ask me which cell phone should I use. I'm telling them about microsip or counterpart or Zoiper or. But every time I'm coming back to, yeah, but if you pay for it, you can expect a certain level of service.
Certainly. Yeah.
So it's the same thing. Yeah, in SIP trunking, you can pay for it, and it could be awful too, unfortunately. But usually, yeah, comparing a solid SIP trunk solution to Google Voice, like saying that, yeah, why would I pay for you when I can have it for free? I think you're not understanding exactly
Definitely.
what's the purpose of of a solid SIP trunking. Either like VoIP.ms, we also offer a suite of hosted PBX solution, but mostly SIP trunking. So Google Voice, you will not have the flexibility of, I don't know, 100 channels on your SIP trunks
Right.
right away like this. I don't think you can even have more than two calls, concurrent calls on Google.
Yeah, something like that. It's pretty minimal. It's very, very stunted. And I think Google Voice, even to this day, is still beta,
Oh
right?
yeah,
So like they can make changes that break your phone system overnight, and there's nothing you can do about it.
exactly. They actually don't care because it's not something like you don't pay for it,
Yeah,
so
it's free. What are you
it's
gonna do?
free. It's free, exactly.
Right. Try calling their support.
Yeah, complain for something free.
Right.
And talking about phone system, um, usually the IT professional will know about it. But if I am a business owner and I want to get started, I want to switch from Google Voice to professional phone service, phone system. What are the questions even a business owner or IT manager should ask themselves before getting started?
Yeah, so a really great question. The way that we do it, and I'm not going to say that this is the way that everybody does it, but we try to break it down into sort of the three main components of the phone system, right? And that's going to be what kind of server, what kind of phones and how many phones, and then what kind of service, right? The actual phone lines, right? So, the server, you've got these cloud hosted systems like Ring Central, 8x8, and like your own service that you guys provide, right? So you've got your cloud hosted stuff. You've got self-installed hosted servers, so something like a free PBX or a 3CX that you have hosted in, DigitalOcean or Vultr or in the cloud
Virtually, yeah.
somewhere. Then you've got on-premises servers, right? So all three of those have distinct advantages and disadvantages, and so we figure out first, like what sort of which way are you angling? Where are you trying to go with the server? For a large company that needs sort of redundancy and that sort of stuff, we usually end up going with an on-premises server where we can have multiple servers that fail over to each other and that sort of stuff. But for a very small business, a cloud platform is great, right? So it just runs the gamut between all of these different types of servers. The phones we break into smaller categories. Like I don't really even discuss specific phone models with customers. I just say you've got your receptionist phones for with a lot of buttons, expandability to multiple sidecars. You've got sort of standard user phones, which are just the phones that are on most everyone's desk. And then you've got utility phones, right? Like what's the phone in the break room and the phone in the warehouse that
Yep, yeah.
needs to ring but doesn't really need any functionality other than that.
Yeah, the
So
biggest function is being rugged.
yeah, yeah. So how many phones do you need in each of those buckets, basically, right? So that's easy for people to think about. Okay, well, I'm going to need 2 receptionist phones because we got 2 receptionists, and then we got 25 users, and we have a couple of extra blah blah blah, right? So then we've got the service, right? And the service boils down to SIP trunking most often, right? And then if you can't do SIP trunking because you don't have the network to support it or the internet connection to support it, there's analog options such as PRIs and POTS lines. So we then sort of drill into what's the best, SIP trunking solution for those customers as well. And once we start with that foundation and sort of get a clear picture of the direction that we're going, we can then give someone a quote and say, okay, well, here's what it's going to cost, including setup, service, and support and all that sort of stuff. And then further refine it from there until we have the perfect solution for the customer. So that's kind of our approach to phone system implementation.
And one of the way that I talk with my customers at VoIP.ms and I identify what's the on the technical side of the phone system. On the network side, usually, of course, I'm a SIP trunk VoIP phone, IP phone. It's digital, so they need the networking inside. On
Yes.
my typical customer will go with IP phone on desk, and maybe sometimes cell phone. Um, they will use digital, so PRI and analog. Unfortunately, it's not in my choice of
Right.
choices. I try to avoid it. So yeah, on the networking side, what are the basic requirements you should mention to a business? Is there, I don't know, like specific switch, or what's the basic information they should be aware?
Yeah. So when we're talking about the network infrastructure being able to support voice over IP, the LAN is typically not the issue, right? Because LANs these days are usually at least gigabit. Oftentimes they're 10 gigabit or 10 gigabit links between switches that then fan out to 1 gigabit links to all of the client devices and the phones and all that sort of stuff. Um, when you think about that amount of speed versus the bandwidth that a phone call takes, which is around 80 kilobits per second per concurrent call, the LAN is usually never a bottleneck, right? So the local area network. So 99% of the issues that people are going to encounter with voice over IP then boil down to the internet connection or the firewall. And the internet connection is typically easy, the easier of the two to mitigate or to deal with, right? As long as you have sufficient bandwidth available for the amount of concurrent calls that you need to make out to the internet, that's
You can
basically
do
all there is. The
you
only
can
other
just
thing
do a
we deal
basic
with on the
calculation.
internet side is what's called double NAT, right? So when a provider will provide you with a router, and then you are also providing your own router. So in between those two routers, there's an extra network that voice over IP does not play very well with, right? So we just try to make sure that that situation is not happening. And then it comes down to the firewall. What kind of firewall do you have? Is it a firewall that we have found to be acceptable for voice over IP? There are some brands, I'm looking at you, Sonic Wall, that just don't work very well with voice over IP. But by and large, most firewalls are fine. And it also comes down to what um, options and features do those firewalls have. So a great example of that is quality of service, where you are going to have the ability in the firewall to prioritize any of your voice over IP networking over something like someone watching a YouTube, channel.
For you.
Right. Yeah. So if you can say, listen, voice calls are the most important thing on this network, and everything else is secondary, that's what we want, right? Because if you're watching YouTube, YouTube is buffered, right? So if you miss some packets in the network stream, it'll recover those packets. Whereas voice over IP is a real-time communication problem. You can't put someone's word back into a sentence that they've spoken, right? If it cuts out, it's gone. So that's why you got to make sure that voice over IP is top priority.
And on a budget scale, you have a brand you can recommend for a small business versus a SME and or maybe an enterprise in terms of networking solution? Do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. So we don't. We only work with business customers, and there are sort of home level as well as prosumer level firewalls, which are not always the best for a business's voice over IP needs. So we typically recommend for the firewall side, especially for small to medium business, pfSense, Netgate pfSense firewalls are very, very good, cost effective, just absolutely bulletproof when they're set up correctly, as well as the Ubiquiti Edge Router line of products. So not their Unify firewalls, but the Edge Router line of firewalls. When you start getting into the upper level, any of your Cisco, Fortinet, Extreme networks, right? All of those are going to be more than sufficient and have all of the features that you would want. But you're also paying exorbitant prices for those sort of enterprise level models. So it's not something that a small, the tanning salon down the street's not going to want that, but they can probably go with a $250, $300 Netgate pfSense firewall and be absolutely fine.
Great. Yeah. No. Cisco. Never heard anyone say that they can buy a Cisco for $100. So
now they do have some small business router. Cisco will sell you small business stuff, but it then comes down to like what's best in that sort of small business space, and Cisco's not our go-to option for that kind of stuff.
Good. I know we already gone through this a little bit, but just for the person who's not really seasoned in this area, just can you? I know it's not exactly typically one or the other, but what's the difference between on-premise versus hosted VoIP solution?
Just basically it comes down to the options that you have for the server itself, right? So a hosted server, if I take we do primarily free PBX phone systems, which is basically the largest open source phone system project in the world. If I take free PBX and I put it into a hosted environment, I have some advantages and some disadvantages. The advantages are you don't have to have any software or any hardware on site that you have to manage. You don't have any hardware that could fail, where a power supply blows out and now you don't have a phone system, that kind of thing. Being virtualized in the cloud means that you can take snapshot backups of that server as well as standard backups of the configuration and whatnot. You have multiple backup options. If I need to fire up a server, it's very quick. I mean, I could get a free PBX server with a VoIP.ms trunk up and running in less than an hour, right? It's very easy to deploy and maintain. The disadvantages are you don't necessarily have those redundant options that you might have with a, say 2 servers on site that can fail over to each other if one of them fails. If a hosted server goes out, it's gone, and now you have to restore a backup to get the hosted server back online. It doesn't happen very often, but it has happened, a handful of times in the past. Also, with the on-premises servers, you have other options such as the ability to have analog trunking out to the public switch telephone network as backup lines. So a really good example of this is for schools as well as for hospitals. We typically always do on-premises servers because of A, the redundancy options, and B, the SIP trunking options, or the trunking options in general. They can use, say a school, right, can use SIP trunking to make their normal calls in and out all day long. But what if their internet goes out, right? You want to have the option to potentially have some POTS lines or a fractional PRI maybe as backup so that they can continue to send and receive calls and more importantly, make emergency calls if they need to, in the event that there is a larger emergency that takes out the internet.
Yeah. And what's the on your end at Crosstalk, the equipment that you are selling? Um, what are what is the equipment you are selling? It's basically on premise
Mm-hmm.
boxes, right?
Yep, we do have a number of servers. They range from 25 phones up to 500 plus phones capacity for each of those servers. We have rebranded servers from a company called Clearly IP. They are sort of one of the biggest innovators in the voice over IP market. Clearly IP, man, they're just doing such cool stuff. So we like them a lot. We're using their phones. We're using their servers. And yeah, we rarely have issues with them. And the nice thing that I love about all of their products is that they come standard with 2-year factory warranties, which is pretty unheard of in the voice over IP space. Most voice over IP phones, most voice over IP servers are going to be 1-year warranty, and then maybe you have an option to buy extended warranty. These are 2-year default warranty, and then you can also tack on a 3-year extended to make 5 years of total coverage, which is about the life expectancy of any on-premises server.
2 years.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
5 years. 5 years. I would say 3 to 5 years is typically what we expect from any server, not just voice over IP, any server that you're implementing.
Sure.
When you're hitting that 3 to 5 year mark, you got to kind of start thinking about what's the option for refreshing that hardware.
Yeah. Moreover, if they run 24/7, so
Yeah.
yeah. As long as you use VoIP.ms trunks on your Clearly IP box.
Which work fine. I've done a full setup video on voice over IP with free PBX using PJ-SIP. I believe it's actually also out on your own knowledge base, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
Mhm.
is. The PG-SIP part that you collaborated with us.
Yep.
And, it was highly asked by our community, and I think you were the right guy to explain it. So yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it works great.
We
It works
linked
great.
it to it. So good. I'll really talk about it really quickly, but we talked about the switch, we talked about the firewall. It remains only the wiring situation. Uh, a lot of new construction now, when they run cables in the walls, they run the cables not like for phones, not like analog, old analog like PSTN compatible phone, but they will run it with Cat 6. But it's not always like this. Sometimes you will have old building, uh, old infrastructure with old wiring.
Sure.
What a business owner that want to switch his phone system should be aware about that.
So yeah, the wiring could be a big problem, right? Because rewiring an entire office can get very expensive. What we've done in the past, there are some options to mitigate that. So I'll give you a good example. There are what are called analog gateways that use FXS ports. Those are station ports, meaning typically they're for analog phones, fax machines, devices that have that RJ11 connection.
Yeah.
We did a retirement home on the East Coast somewhere. I forget exactly where it was. And they had 400 resident rooms. And you can imagine to rewire all of those RJ11 jacks in every single room with, Cat 6 would be just cost prohibitive, right? It would cost way too much money.
Yeah.
So instead, we use their existing wiring and we put in a number of analog gateways that essentially connect out to their existing analog wiring and then convert that into voice over IP for connectivity to the phone system. So it's kind of like a man in the middle, if you will. And that way, their residents were able to bring in their own analog phones and plug them into that RJ11 jack in the wall, and they got dial tone just as if they had copper lines running all the way to the public switch telephone network. So That kind of thing can really, really save costs, and it allows companies to make that upgrade to a voice over IP phone system while retrofitting sort of and I guess taking into account their older technology. And so it really so like in cases like that, normally what we'll see is like all of the resident rooms stayed analog, but all of the reception desk and the break room and all of these other places, those all went to voice over IP plugged in with, Ethernet. And then everything else stayed analog. So there's definitely those hybrid approaches to voice over IP. It's not like a complete rip and replace every single time.
Yeah, it's basically, in a simple word, like big ATA switches that you put in place, and
Yeah.
or even for small businesses, I think using ATA switch or small ATA switch, or just like just not name it, the HT 802, 801,
The Grand Stream devices, yeah, sure.
streaming devices. And for a small business, it could be just perfect to use that instead of having a IP desk phone or
Yeah.
bigger.
It can work. Listen, I'd rather sell them a desk phone, but that can work if you need it to, for sure.
And let me ask why.
Why can it work, or why would I rather sell them a desk phone?
Why you would rather sell a desk phone?
Because the user experience is much better with a voice over IP phone that is up to date, right? So if you plug an analog phone into a analog telephony adapter and connect that to your PBX, that analog phone will be able to send and receive phone calls, no problem. But what about everything else? What about buttons that show you who's on the phone and who's not on the phone? What about buttons that show you visual voicemail so you don't have to dial in and listen to the voicemail? You can have a screen that you can scroll through all your different voicemails and manage them right through the screen of the phone, right? So those types of bonus added features don't come when you're retrofitting analog phone systems. The user experience is not as productive when all you can do is use the phone as a phone. It'd be if your smartphone that you have in your pocket could only make and receive phone calls, but it couldn't do everything else, like browse Twitter and search the web for fluffy cats or whatever.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I completely agree. It's not the need of everybody to have all the feature set. So that's why the telephone adapter exists, and probably they still sell a ton of them every year.
Mostly we use them for fax machines these days.
For fax, yeah, of course. Or I don't want to do ageism, but for people that are more older that don't care about the like, all they want is be able to take the phone and call and receive calls. So yeah, sometimes it can be also this, but yeah, it's totally true. I think having a phone instead of an ATA, anyway, you will need the RG45 wire to connect that ATA box near to your ATA. So yeah, at the end, what's the benefit? And on the cost side, it's not that much expensive. An ATA is about $50, and a desk IP phone will, if you find one, will be around that too, or maybe a little bit more, but not.
Yeah, they'll range. So IP phones are going to be, there's a wide range, like just like any technology. You can buy an IP phone for $50. You can also buy an IP phone for $500, right? So it's really comes down to what you need and what you think, aesthetically looks best on your desk, basically.
The 500 phone, when I'm talking with enterprise level customer, I'm doing like recommendation for phones, and I'm saying, okay, for the president you need an executive phone, right?
Right.
That's I'm calling those fancy phone with the biggest screen on it,
exactly,
and all the color, and sometimes even a camera on it. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's you need an executive phone. That's exactly what you need. When he arrived at his desk, he's the boss, because he
that's
got,
right. He's got the big old phone. It's as big as the desk.
Yeah. To come down to you a little bit back. If we want to hire your team, if we want to hire you, where of course where we can find you, it's pretty easily.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
but what what is the question you should ask when you start a project? Where you will start the like initiate the process. Uh, you mentioned the top three question at the beginning, but is there something more specifically? Like, is there? I don't want to say you will avoid some scenario, but or is there contract you will not take based on question you will ask, or is there?
Yeah. I mean, we certainly have red flags that, if so when we sell phone systems to customers, we do our best to ensure that those customers are set up with the best, or I shouldn't say that, no, I wouldn't even say the best equipment, but the equipment that we know works very well. Um, and so when we have customers that are trying to sort of fit a round peg into a square hole, or whatever that expression is, they're just trying to work with stuff that we know is not going to provide them with the best experience, but they're adamant that they need to use that. We'll typically turn those customers down and say, listen, we appreciate the opportunity, but we feel that you would probably be best suited going in a different direction, right? So but I guess as far as what questions to ask, the most important thing is just to ask questions in general, right? If you are unsure of how something should work, or unsure of what your needs are for your organization, start asking those questions. And we're like the perfect people to ask, right? Because we're here to help. We want to be your voice over IP partner. So if something's not going to work, we will tell you that.
Right
So
away.
we're not this kind of people that'll just take your business and try to crowbar in whatever we can. We don't
Yes,
want to do
sell for
that
sell.
because, yeah, if we're supporting a whole bunch of sort of one-off, sort of kludged together solutions for customers, that doesn't help us be good support partners for you, right? We want to make sure that we're supporting equipment that we know works very well. I always say this, that like, we love our customers at Crosstalk Solutions, but the last thing I want to do is hear from you, right? Because if I'm hearing from our customers, it usually means something's wrong. So we want to set up a phone system so that I never have to hear from you. I want it to work perfectly so that you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. If you sell crap, you will at the end it will come back to you, and it's going to be your problem.
Yeah.
Uh, what's your area of work like? From where to where? Well, will you go to New York, for instance?
Yeah, so we are nationwide. We very, very rarely go on site with customers, especially this day and age with COVID and whatnot. We have always historically worked mostly remote. There are some large installs where we have sent folks out on site to do the actual installation, but with VPNs and with the internet and with the technologies that we have today, we build your entire phone system. We work with you to design it. We build it in our offices, and then we ship it out to you pre-built so that when the contact at the customer site receives that equipment, and oftentimes the contact is going to be an IT administrator themselves. Maybe they're not so well versed in voice over IP, but they know IT well enough to plug in all the phones and get them working and connect them to the server. And then we work with the customer once they have it connected to make sure everything's dialed in, and then help them through the transition into that new phone system from whatever they had previously.
Great, great. So I hope a lot of our customer will call you then, or send you business. Um, Last question for you, Chris, is
Yeah.
Crosstalk Solution. Crosstalk. I know the expression, but where the name of your business came from?
That's a good question. It's just something that I thought sounded cool. It has no real meaning. I also a lot of people think that it's CS, like my initials, Crosstalk Solutions and Chris Sherwood, but that was a coincidence as well. I originally envisioned Crosstalk Solutions being a solution provider that did custom development for phone systems, right? So basically overseeing, like, if you are a larger company and you need people to be able to, call in and then enter in their account number, and then that looks up something in the database, and then it forwards it to the correct people based on the database lookup, right? That kind of phone system application, that's what I originally envisioned that we would be doing. We don't do any of that, though. So that's something that I guess that's where it started. And the funny thing is that crosstalk in networking terms is a bad thing. You don't want crosstalk because it means your network packets are basically slamming into each other and things aren't working as efficiently as they could. So I don't know. It's just kind of a funny name that I thought of, and it stuck.
Yeah, that's okay. Sometimes business have names have a very specific meaning, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's just like this one story. I thought that it was because of phone talking, like two
It's all of
person
that.
is,
It's
two
whatever you
person
want.
is talking together. They are cross talking. Yeah, so
Yeah. Funny
I
thing
was
is too, there's a religious radio show called Crosstalk. Crosstalk as in, like, Jesus and the cross and all that. And so every once in a while we get some very interesting phone calls of people that want to discuss their religious beliefs with my IT technicians. So that's kind of funny too. There's some overlap there. I think some people listen to that radio show and then they search Crosstalk and just call our phone number.
Oh boy, that's funny. That's really funny. Yeah. At least with our name VoIP.ms, we don't have these kind of issue. It's pretty
Not a lot of
obvious what
confusion
we.
there. No.
No, it's pretty obvious. So no. Great, Chris. Thanks for your time. It was well appreciated.
Certainly. Thanks for having me.
It was really a nice interview, and I hope we will continue to collaborate on many other projects for our customer or your customer or audience. You can register at VoIP.ms with the promo code crosstalk, just crosstalk. So basically, it's easy if you want to try that service. And if you need assistance, if you need any IT or VoIP deployment, you should call Chris and his team. I think they will appreciate your call.
Absolutely. Yeah. Crosstalksolutions.com, or you can email us info@crosstalksolutions.com.
You don't give your personal email, Chris.
I do not. But honestly, info@crosstalksolutions.com goes into our ticketing system, which is almost like my personal email because I'm in there all day long.
Yeah, joking. So thanks again, and we talk again. So
all right. Thanks, Philippe.
goodbye.